Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Good morning to everyone. This is Nitin Sridhar, Chief Curator of Advaita Academy, and I welcome you all to yet another session of Weekend with Wisdom. This week we have invited Dr. Swamini Swatma Vidyananda ji to speak about Kaivalya Upanishad, which is highly regarded as a treatise on self-knowledge. Swamini Swatma Vidyananda Saraswati ji has taught at several universities, including UC Berkeley. She is widely recognized as a scholar of Advaita Vedanta and is a disciple of Puja Sri Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji. She is widely in demand for lectures and seminars in US and internationally for her expertise in interreligious engagement and in-depth training and scholarship on Advaita Vedanta. She is the Acharya of Asha Vijnana Gurukulam, which was founded in 2004 and has centers in Atlanta, Eugene, and as well as in Washington, D.C. and few other places in US. Thank you very much for coming on our show, Swaminiji. We
Thank
are
you.
very fortunate to have you here. Viewers, you can ask your questions through Q&A box, and Swaminiji will take them up at the end of the class. This weekend, the Weekend with Wisdom will have 4 sessions, morning and evening, today as well as tomorrow. So with this brief opening remarks, I request Swaminiji to please start your session.
ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयामदेवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 Namaste to everybody and thank you to Advaita Academy for inviting me to share with you a few thoughts on Kaivalya Upanishad. And the word Kaivalya comes from a word Kevala. Kevalasya bhava Kaivalya. It's a particular kind of a Sanskrit construction of an abstract noun, with a pratyaya, with a suffix called shyaj. So this Kevala becomes Kaivalya through certain grammatical rules, which fortunately we don't have to go into right now. This is our good fortune. So we can straight away say it's an abstract noun. But what does Kevala mean? Kevala means only. Even in our vernacular languages like Hindi, Keval, only this. Yeah, Kevala means only. Yeah. And then Kaivalya means what? We can make up a word only plus ness, onlyness. Yeah, abstract noun, not loneliness. Okay, yeah, you have to because that would be the antithesis of the Upanishad. Not loneliness. We are not talking of loneliness. We are talking of onlyness. This is not a small thing. So this Kevala only is something which is to be looked into, because when we use this word only to qualify something in the in the world, I will have only dessert, I will skip lunch, as in let's say like that. So that means what? You'll only have this because this only is used to distinguish other things, belonging to the same category, same class. So I'll have only the sweet dish. I don't want, any other thing. Why? Because those are all too many calories. But what about this? This was swimming in ghee, whatever you wanted. No, no, no. If I have this, then I can't have any other thing. So I will have only this, but not that. So in the world, in the Jagat, when we use the word only, what do? We have a particular kind of a usage. We have a usage which is like adjectival usage. And adjectival usage means you use the word only to distinguish a particular thing from other things belonging to the same category of things in the world. स्वजातीयेभ्यः विषयेभ्यः व्यावर्तकम्. That which you distinguish from other things. I'll have only this but not that. That is the idea. Even though you may not say that. You go to somebody's house and they say, what will you have? I'll have only water. Meaning, don't bring me milk, don't bring me coffee, don't offer me tea, only water. So even though you may not go into a big speech about tea, coffee, milk, juice, etc., it is implied. It's an implied understanding that there are many things and I will have only this. Now, in the word Kaivalya, this is a slightly different meaning. Yeah, it is not that this Upanishad, is something, that stands out of, in the world. I'll have only this Upanishad or I'll have only this knowledge and then, other things I'll have later. Slightly different. The implication, and it's a very, very big implication, and then that is what we will have to see when we study this, if we ever have a chance to study this Upanishad in detail, that implication, will be revealed in, in a very systematic way through the mantras and everything. But this is just a short gist. But here, the implication, even though it's a short gist, is no less profound. Here the implication is that, that word only applies to you. The meaning of the word Kevala here is you. How? Because I am here and then so many other things are here. In this room there is the wires coming from the computer, coming from the microphone, there is, lights and fans and curtains and, tables and chairs. How can you say I am the only thing? Well, for now we can say you are the only thing that matters. Because who is saying there is curtain, there is carpet, there is chair, there is table? Me. I am the one who is saying. Can the table recognize you and say good morning, hello, good evening? No. The table cannot do that. The chair cannot do that. Correct? That is why you are only. Why? What is the only here qualifying? The only is not qualifying one among many things. The only is qualifying the, the only thing that is you, which is the source of a self-aware, self-conscious human being. Forget human for now. Self-aware, self-conscious being. That's the only thing that is there. You are the only thing you can say, this is table, this is chair, this is sky, this is, sun, this is moon. You are cognizing the whole world. You are a self-conscious being. You are the only source of that awareness, that consciousness. There's only one awareness and that is you. That is the word only here. Do you see how it is different from I'll have only water? Very big difference. Because there is an implied thing, there is coffee, tea, juice, milk, but then I'll have water. Or if you are vegan, some other, coconut milk, almond milk, all these things are there. These categories are there. But then What will you have? I will have only water among many things. But here, this is, this is not a Visheshana. The word only is not adjectival. The word only is what? The word only is more a Lakshana. Lakshana means, it's a definition. It is not a description of something which belongs to a certain category to distinguish it from other categories. No. Lakshana means sarvebhyah vishayebhyah vyavartakam lakshanam. So it is something that distinguishes everything. Everything else it distinguishes, and so this is you. This source of consciousness, this source of self awareness, and you are not only self aware, you are aware you exist, you are aware of the existence of every single thing in the universe, and so you can objectify everything, and that is what is called Kaivalya. And it is a treatise on that. There are some, short Upanishad, some mantras that unfold this, this understanding. Because while listening, it sounds wonderful. Yeah, I'm the only thing that matters. I'm the only thing that counts. In fact, that's what I wanted. And this is, I got what I wanted. And then how long does it last? It lasts as long as you are logged into the webinar. And as soon as you log out, क्या होता है? सब, goes away. Because then you get, upset, because then you get angry, then you're hungry, then you're something. Then sometimes there is a combination of hungry and angry. They have made a new word in America. American teenagers say, don't mess with me, I'm hangry. I said, what is hangry? Hungry plus angry. Hungry because I'm angry because I'm hungry. So so what is the need to be angry because you're hungry? If you're hungry, eat. Well, no, because if I'm hungry and I don't know it, then I become angry. This is what the whole thing is. So here you are aware of yourself. You don't need, a certificate of existence. Birth certificate, okay, because that is again relative to place, time, and place, time, and day of birth. Place and time of birth, that is what it is. It's an event. But you, unfolded by the Veda, dear friends, are not an event. You are not an event that is unfolding in time. And neither is your understanding of yourself as Bhagavan, as the whole, which is revealed by the Upanishads, and an event that is unfolding in time. That is not how it works. That is not how it is at all. And so then, if I am not an event, what am I? I mean, I have a date of birth, I have a certificate to prove it. Yes, but it is just a mere certificate. It is not. It is a mere certificate of recording the event that this, awareness, so to speak, entered this body, mind, sense complex, or came to greet this world. That is the event. The event is not, the event is not of consciousness being born. Awareness has no birth, no death. Immortal. Kaivalya. It's the only thing which is free of being, having birth and death, and that only thing is you. This has to be understood. And therefore, this is what is the meaning of the word Kaivalya. It has to be discovered that you are not an event, and when you understand this knowledge, then you cannot, when you say I am quote unquote enlightened, if not enlightened, at least lightened of the burden of my self ignorance, if you say that, that also is not an event. The enlightenment, so to speak, or the so-called enlightenment is not a event that is happening in time. It is more of an uncovering of the eclipse of, what is that? Atma Ajnanam, the patina of self-ignorance. That is the eclipse, and that is what has to go. And that is why we need a body of knowledge. That is the antidote to this eclipse. And the eclipse is what? Eclipse is not a small thing. The eclipse is very powerful. It's a shadow reality. It's a shadow that can, as though, make the sun, the light of consciousness in the form of the sun here, the inner sun, invisible. And so the person searches, Bhagavan, tum kaha ho? Where are you? Oh Lord, where are you? The seeker is the one who is searching for this inner darshan, so to speak. And Bhagavan is saying, I'm right here, look. Look through the forest of your ragadveshas, through the forest of your likes and dislikes, I'm hiding there. Through the forest, through the darkness of the self-ignorance that is there, I'm hiding there. Just look. Bring the light of knowledge, look. But you cannot see. And this is the same thing that is replicated every day in our temples, which are closed because of coronavirus, and which is why we are directed to the inner temple, which is always open, and we have to have now inner darshan. But when the temples used to be open all the time and you could go any time you wanted, and no physical distancing, no standing here and little X is marked and you have to stand here and go, not bump into people, when that was not there, you could just go. And then especially you don't talk of modern temples, talk of ancient South Indian temples. And then what do you see there? The answer is nothing, because no lights. You stand in front of the sanctum, Meenakshi temple, Madurai Meenakshi temple, fantastic. And the goddess is, so beautiful to look at, but you don't see anything. It's all dark. And then you look in the sanctum, the walls are black. And then, the deity is made of black stone. And the priest is standing there, but the priest, being South Indian, is also dark skinned, so you don't see anything at all. There is one small light, tiny one, when the oil lamp is there, and it doesn't show much. It's like an appetizer, it whets the appetite, but doesn't give you anything at all to hang on to. Doesn't give you anything. And then so you just start blinking in the dark. You're just keeping on saying, what is this? Where is this goddess? I have traveled all the way from North India. I want to have darshan. Where is this? Who is this goddess? And then the arati time comes. Takes karpura. Karpura means that it is a camphor. And camphor is used because it burns without residue. The camphor is Upanishad here. Yeah. Upanishad is the camphor, and what does it burn? It burns self-ignorance without a residue. And then the priest will put the camphor in a container, arati, and then he will light it and then take it all around the deity. Then you say, oh, she's wearing a green sari. Oh, look at the sari, look at the jewelry, look at the peak, the little parrot on her shoulder. Look at all this. How beautiful. So where was the goddess till now? She was gone somewhere attending to some other devotee, and then she came and stood in the temple after dressing up in the green sari. No, she was there all along. What was wanting was a means of knowledge in the form of the camphor light of the Upanishad, even though it is no comparison, and the mantra that is chanted is Natatra Suryo Bhati na Chandra Tarakam Nema Vidyuto Bhanti Kutoyam Agnihi Tameva Bhantam Anubhati Sarvam Asya Bhasa Sarvamidam Vivahati. Oh Lord, there the sun does not shine, neither the moon nor the stars. What to talk of this, nor the lightning. What to talk of this miserable lamp that I am showing you? Because of whose light I am able to even see this lamp. The eyes are lighted up by that light of consciousness. Chakshushas chakshuhu, the eye of the eye, the power of consciousness behind, the power of Bhagavan, which is lighting up the lights to even see this lamp. I am showing this miserable lamp to you. May this bless me with your darshan within. This is what the Upanishad is. This is what Kaivalya is, to understand that myself and this goddess that I am seeing is one. You know, therefore it's not a small word. And the purport of this, Upanishad is not small, it's a big word, Kaivalya. To understand it can take many, many lifetimes, but we will see, we will have a nice grip on it by the time this is, these sessions are done. We will have a good, a nice handle on this. So this is Kaivalya. And this, Kaivalya is part of the Veda. This Veda is again, a body of knowledge that is not the property of any country, any ethnicity, any group of people, any kind of varna, any kind of jati, nothing. Nobody can say, the Veda belongs to Indians. No. Veda belongs to the Brahmanas. No. Veda belongs to this particular gender, men. No. Veda is for everyone. Nobody can copyright the Veda because Veda predates copyrights. And if you try, Bhagavan will reclaim the copyright of everything that you think is yours. Bhagavan takes it back in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Vedanam Samavedoham, he says, I am the Veda. I am, Aham Yajuhu, I'm Sama, I'm Yajuhu, I'm Atharva, I'm everything. So this is the Veda. And why cannot I put a copyright on it? Because other people will steal it. Yeah, let them steal. We are begging for this knowledge to be stolen from the mouths of the gurus. We are begging for this knowledge to be taken away. Please take it away. That is why there is no charge for anything like this. What can you, the knowledge of yourself as Kaivalya, as Bhagavan is priceless. This inner darshan, you cannot put a price tag on this inner darshan, so we don't even bother. And besides, it's a swatas siddha vastu, that your Bhagavan is already established. I am not trying to tell you that. So therefore what, so to know something that is already as good as known is not something that you can put a price on. Please steal it, take it away, But for this, we have to understand what the Veda is. Veda means knowledge, and the Veda is, you cannot put a copyright on it, because the main reason you cannot put a copyright on it is because it is applicable to everybody. It is, it is hitam. Hitam means what? Comforting. It's a source of comfort. Shubham, source of something auspicious. Mangalam, same thing. It is hitam. It is sahasramatravat hitam. It is like as loving. The Veda, she is as loving. Her contents are as loving as 1,000 functional mothers. In Kali Yuga, you have to add the word functional in front of mother, okay? Yeah, because there are so many mother issues, all these things are there. So you can't take it for granted. So even one loving mother, she is so wonderful. Imagine 1,000 loving mothers. That is what the Veda is. But why? But how can you say, because it is hitam for everybody? Because for you, hitam may be something. Like somebody wants a piece of chocolate cake. Right now, that is hitam for them. This is what they want because they have a craving. Get me some chocolate cake or ice cream or something. Get me something chocolate. And the hitam for somebody else, maybe my family should be okay. I should not contract this virus. That is hitam for somebody else. So how can you say it is universal hitam? Can say it is universal hitam because the Veda is a huge compendium of all the hitams that you can ever imagine. So for the person who says, I want a child, but I'm not able to have a child, putra kameshtya yajeta, please offer this ishti. Ishti means a fire ritual, a worship, form of elaborate worship, called Putra Kama. That is how Rama was born. You know, Rama was not the founder of this tradition. We don't have a founder, thank God. You know, because if there is a founder, then the religion flounders after the founder is gone, wondering what did they mean, what did they say. Here, you know, we have this body of knowledge channeled by the sages. They are not mantra kartarah, they are not the doers or the authors of the mantra, they are mantra drashtarah, they are the seers. That's why we call them seer. It is a particularly Indian word, even though it is there in the English language, it is translated from drashta, seer. Seer of the mantra. Mantra is existent, it is given by Bhagavan, a seer. So what are they seeing? They are seeing that there are all kinds of upaya, remedies for all kinds of wants, so that the person can enjoy hitam. So for one person hitam is having a child, and if for one person the hitam is having a child, for the another person the hitam is going on a tour somewhere. Very difficult to do now. You know, better to stay in place. Yeah. But some people have what is called wanderlust. They want to keep on traveling. That is hitam. And the third person, the hitam is getting a good job. Fourth person, the hitam is waiting to retire. Like this, the hitam keeps varying. And the Veda becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. If you start chanting the Veda now, even after 10 days, you will not run out of the mantras. You can keep on going, because it is all based on the compendium of human desires. Perhaps this is one tradition where the desires in the Hindu dharma they are not vilified. They are acknowledged as valid. Sarvesham buddhau, Bhagavan Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, ragadveshau vyavasthitau. In all the buddhis, there are such things called raga, O Arjuna. Raga means strong preferences. There is such a thing called dvesha, strong prejudices. That is there. Oh, so I can have lots of likes and dislikes. Yes. And then in another place he says, every buddhi has likes and dislikes. Another place he says, kamosmi bharatarshabha, I am in the form of desire. So more desires means more Bhagavan in me. So this is acknowledged. But with a little bit of a caveat. Sarvesham buddhau ragadveshau vyavasthitau. In all buddhis, ragadveshas reside. But what? Read the fine print which is in the next line. Tayor vasham na agachet tau hi asya purushasya paripanthinau. Don't come under their spell. You know, don't come under their spell. Have the ragadveshas, let them be privileges rather than making you a slave to them. You manage them as opposed to them managing you. This is where the thing is, this is where the Veda is of great help. So you cry, I don't have a child, I want to have a child. Here, Putra Kameshti, it works. You know, somebody did it in Chennai, few decades back. And they had 3 or 4 children after 20 years of childlessness and everything, all the scientific, medical, upayas, remedies being exhausted. How does it work? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. The thread of connection is Shraddha, faith. That's all. Nobody knows how it works. So, but it works. And in fact, a German researcher did this research on Kariri. It's a particular Vedic ritual, rain ritual. And so you chant the mantras, and then for 8 or 9 days, it's 9-day ritual. And even, they did it in Kalahari desert. He had a group of Ritviks, the priests, and did it in an elaborate, he took a group there in the desert. And there also after 9 days it rained when it was not supposed to rain. Then he must have gone to some other rainy place like Cherrapunji. I'm just imagining, but he must have gone there also. And then he would have gone on the only day it didn't rain. and then did the ritual and made it rain, and the people were very mad at him. Perhaps it chased them all out of town. One shopping day, one day, and you have made that also rain. You have rained on our parade. So like this, how does it rain? What is the connection between chanting mantras and then putting ghee and then suddenly it rains? Don't know. Rain is known, and then the means, the Kariri ritual, unknown. Known means unknown ends. End is unknown, like Swarga. People want to go to Swarga because they are not happy with just reserving a place here. Then they want to reserve a place in the afterlife. For that also, because for some people that is hitam, they start worrying about it in old age, what will happen after I die. And so for that hitam also, there is a swarga kamaha somena yajeta. Soma is a particular, what is that called, uh, extinct plant, and then that plant, you press the juice and then you offer it in the fire, and then there is a reservation made somewhere in heaven. You will be there for some time. Okay, so but this is again, what is all this? This is all just relative hitam. Relative hitam. And relative hitam, we have to understand, is based on two things. Relative hitam is based on your efforts, because those mantras are not going to chant themselves, you have to chant them. The rituals are not going to perform themselves, you have to perform them. And then you have to await the results. And supposing the brick that you make is cracked and the ghee is little stale, don't think you will get the results. What you put in only comes out. Yeah. So it is now you understand that this hitam is like a recipe. The Veda is like a recipe book. And what is that? Karma apeksha is there. In the Veda, karma apeksha is there. There is an expectancy that you will do something in order to gain the results. Yeah. So this karma apeksha is not a small thing. Because, when you're hungry and then people gift you with a recipe book, that's not enough to just read the recipe and go, aha. Because, between aha and swaha means swallowing it, there is a very big, there's a big gap. You can't just go, aha, my hunger is fulfilled because I read this recipe for vegetable pulao. Fantastic recipe. You have to actually go get the ingredients. Some ayasa is there, effort is there, and with the result of this effort, then you have to make it, then you have to eat it, correct? Or if you're really hungry, you eat the pages of the recipe, and then you have to do something. You have to eat the book itself. So the Veda is like that. You have to do things. So for this hitam is karma, karmana, what? Upatam. It is gain. This hitam is there. The recipe for the hitam is there. And the recipe for the hitam is gained by karma. And that karma, when you do this karma, what do you become? Karta. You become a karta. And then, why do you become a karta? Bhogaya karma. In order to enjoy. Nobody says, I am karta for the sake of karta. That is silly. It's like a person who is cooking. What are you making? I'm cooking breakfast. Oh, it looks very elaborate. Yeah, it will take 2 hours. It's more, so it's more like brunch. So after that you will eat. No, I won't eat. No time to eat. Then what will you do after you cook this? It will be time to prepare lunch. So then you're going to prepare lunch. Yes. Then what? And then after that what? Then it will be time to prepare tea and snacks. And after that I have to rush to prepare dinner. So you're doing annadhanam. You're giving the food and then you're getting some enjoyment. No, I'm just cooking. Nobody does this. Adi Shankara puts it very succinctly in the Bhagavad Gita Bhashya when he says, Prayojanam anuddishya mandopi karmani na pravartate. Even a dull person, developmentally challenged person, will not do karma without some reward, without some expectation of something that is there. So nobody is essentially a karta. We are not a karta. Why? Bhogaya karma. You want to become a bhokta. That is why you do karma. That's why you do karma. And then, so all these goodies, offered by the Veda is what is karma bound. Number one, we have to understand it is karma apeksha asti. It is there. The karma expectancy is there without actually engaging in going and buying the ghee, preparing the fire, doing all this. So it's all based on karma. You have to understand. And then the second thing we have to understand is that whatever is based on karma, is it finite or infinite? Finite, because it depends on what you put, then you reap. As you sow, so shall you reap, is a very nice way to understand this. So whatever you put in, that only comes out. So if you put in a lot of effort, then what will happen? Lot of things will come out. And if you put in a little bit of effort, little things come out. And then, but whether you put a lot or a little, it is still finite. Still finite. That's why people have to go to that, people who are Vaidikas following this tradition, they pray every day. You know, why? Because it is like cooking. Yesterday's prayer was fulfilling yesterday's needs. Today's prayer is for today's needs. Tomorrow's prayer is for tomorrow's needs. Like this. You cannot say, I went to the temple in the last birth, I don't have to go now. You cannot say that. Every time you have to keep on doing this, keep on doing this, keep on doing this. And so the Veda is not a small thing, it is hitam. It keeps you going. Its effect is such, it has three effects. One, it keeps you going, and it keeps you, being in the place of a conscious agent producing the results of your action. There's nothing passive about karma, at all. Karma is dynamic. And the Veda puts you as a Yajamana, as the agent. Yajamana means the person who is in charge of the worship. So the Veda puts you in the form of the Yajamana, a conscious agent. That's why you do Sankalpa in the beginning. Mamotpata Durita Kshayartham Adam Ahamidam Karishye. In order to get rid of all the old karmas, I'm doing this puja. Daily puja is done in order to, ward off obstacles. What are obstacles? Not Ganesha's anger. You cannot say Ganesha is angry with me, that's why I'm not getting this promotion. Ganesha is no business being angry. you know Ganesha is just sitting there happily eating his modaks. He's not angry with you. Then why am I not getting the promotion? Something in the last life is a pratibandhaka. Pratibandhaka means what? It is standing in your way. Who knows what it was. Some karma is coming out, is expressing itself, and that karma needs to be exhausted. How? That karma is part of your prarabdha. That which you were born with to eat, it is on your plate, it has to be exhausted. And then, either you have to experience the pain of not getting the promotion, and then the double pain of seeing your co-worker who is a lazy idiot get the promotion. That is even more painful than you not getting the promotion. You have to experience that. And then what? And then the prayer here, the rituals offered by the Veda are a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful reprieve. It's a wonderful reprieve to be able to have this prayer, so that to ward off the other karma. This is what is kept in the intentionality. So you say the intention. I am getting rid of past karma. That's why I am doing this puja. And then, sometimes the sankalpas are very elaborate. They say dharma artha moksha, dharma artha kama mokshartham, so that I will have all the purusharthas. I will have dharma, I will have this, I will have that, all these things I will have. So I'm doing this, all the wants in life is there. And this I'm doing for the eradication of disease. This I'm doing for vittarjanam, in order to get wealth. All these things are said in the sankalpa, so that you are aware, you are an awareful, mindful agent. You're not an automatic, routinized person who is just going and coming and no. You're mindfully doing this. In fact, the word mindfulness, even though it has gained a lot of traction in the Buddhist scriptures and in especially in Western Buddhism, mindfulness, it's all about mindfulness. And then, but actually, it has come from the Hindu Dharma alone. Here you are you cast yourself every morning when you do puja as a conscious mindful agent, because you cannot not be an agent. Even if you say I'm not going to do anything, that is karma. You're making a choice. I'm going to simply sit. Simply sitting is a karma, because so many muscles of the ask the muscles in your body, ask your heart that is continuing to pump, ask the blood that is continuing to flow. Simply sitting is action. So then, so now you're being a conscious actor. This is the first gift of the Veda. First gift of the Veda is that be conscious of your wants, your needs, don't be afraid to express them. Second gift of the Veda is that, it makes you a devotee, because you understand there is no other way to get this. Every other way is exhausted. I am exhausted, so I have to only pray. All the avenues are closed. Why? The durita from the past life is so much. Durita means bad karma from the past life is standing in the way of having a smooth relationship with the elders, with the children, with people. The what is that? The karma in the past of the past is standing in the way of expressing my wants, having my needs met, all these things. And so therefore what? First I encounter my helplessness. Second, the Veda drags me and puts me in the place of a devotee. The hands that were helplessly raised, who are you, where are you, what should I do, join together in prayer finally. This is again a conscious entity minting oneself as a devotee. This is possible only through Veda. This is a very big hitam. When you put things in the lap of the Lord, you know you have done whatever you can. It is in her hands, his hand. Let it happen. Let it go on. There is a sense of a great relief. This is a very nice present of the Veda. See how that's why Veda is hitam. First, it makes you take responsibility for your action and express your needs, wants, and desires consciously. Second, it funnels the wants and the needs and the desires through this avenue called Bhagavan, who is in the seat of the giver of all wants, desires, and needs, because everything comes from Bhagavan. Bad karma has come from Bhagavan called Papa. Then Punya, good karma, is also as a result of your actions, but again blessed by Bhagavan, who is Karma Phala Data. So since everything comes from Bhagavan, I become a devotee. I go to the source. This is what it is. Before, I was only dealing with resource. This is my resource, that is my resource. Now there is no re there. I go straight to the source. The second gift of the Veda. And the third gift of the Veda, since this is all sequential, the third gift of the Veda is that it makes you into a dharmic person. A dharmic person means a person who will not flout the rules, the general rules of not cheating, not defrauding others, not cutting corners just because my want is great. I become an ethical person because of the Veda. You see, for us, dharma is not a mandate of Bhagavan. Thou shalt be dharmic. No. Dharma is a manifestation of Bhagavan. Wherever, in every heart there is dharma, wherever there is dharma, Bhagavan resides. Dharma is Bhagavan. And Veda alone, no other way to know this. Veda alone makes you aware of that. Following the Veda, fulfilling your desires, makes you aware of that. Makes you aware that dharma alone is, is Bhagavan. And so I need dharma in my life, and without dharma I cannot get these things, because you see all the wants and needs do a what is that called? There is these days it is very fashionable, flash mob dance. Yeah. Suddenly, you're just going about your life in New York, Grand Central Station. It's already planned or something, and some music will play, and everybody will start dancing, to this music. Suddenly, unplanned, other people also join. Maybe four people have planned this, but suddenly 20, people join, 25 people join, 100 people join, 500 people join. It becomes a flash mob dance. And what am I comparing this flash mob to? The Raga Dveshas in the head suddenly decide to stage a wonderful performance. I want this fulfilled right now. They create a pressure. Raga Dveshodbhavam Vegam. Vega means pressure. The Raga Dveshas are not bad, we already saw. They are the gift of Bhagavan. Without Raga, there is no, without desire, you would not be here signing on to this retreat. I would not be here teaching this retreat. Advaita Academy would not be here organizing this retreat. This is all, karma. So we have seen this karma is not the problem. The Vega behind the karma, powering the karma, is the problem. And this Vega has to be reduced. And then otherwise, what will this Vega do? The Vega will come, prayunkte, puts a pressure on you to fulfill the desire. And a person under the pressure filled desire is like a pressure cooker. One day or the other blows up, and what? Flouts the rules of dharma. It happens innocently enough. you know Somebody asks, oh, you know how is your life, and the person is a great yogi, does a lot of yoga, and then so you also say, I'm also doing yoga. And what yoga you're doing? You're just scratching your back. That's all you're doing. And if done properly, that's an asana. You tell yourself, if I just do it like this, it becomes an asana. So I'm just scratching my back, but I will just say, I'm doing yoga. Are you doing yoga? No, you're not doing yoga. Other than scratching the back or reaching out on the top shelf to get that dabba of chaklis or murukku, whatever you want to eat. That's all you're doing. You're not doing yoga, but then you're in this group of people. Just now, Advaita Academy had this wonderful global yoga festival. It was extended actually because it was so successful. And so, like this, you are around all these people who are doing yoga, and then suddenly you feel, I mean, they are not saying, why aren't you doing yoga? They are going about their life. And then, suddenly you feel a little pressure. And what do you say? I'm also doing yoga. So then what happened here? There is a split. There is a split between the you that knows, the pramata, the you that knows no yoga is being done, only bhoga is being done at most. And then there is a split between you, and then there is a split between the one who said, I am doing yoga. And so what happens as a result? There is a kind of that split is a split between the real person, the devotee, and the shadow self. It starts small enough. Then from speech, from vak, it goes to action. From thought, speech to action. And then slowly one feels like one can get away with cutting corners. And then what happens? And each time you cut corners, you incur papa. You are actually becoming a machine. One is becoming a papa generating machine. As long as dharma is flouted, one becomes a papa generating machine, and then all that again has to be warded off through prayers. Then it becomes an endless cycle. It is in fact an endless cycle anyway, because so many papas are done without our knowledge. And so therefore what do? We try to become more and more dharmic as a result of the Veda. It is just so beautiful. As a result of the Veda, you become more dharmic because you rely on Bhagavan, devotion, prayer to fulfill this all the wants. And then finally the greatest gift that the Veda gives is truly hitam. What does it do? It makes you outgrow it. No person in the world, in with whom you are in a relationship will make you outgrow them. In fact, they want you close. You know, they want you close, they want you near, and they will make sure to keep you like that by giving you the things they want and whatnot. They'll keep you going through all kinds of psychological subtle manipulations. Every relationship is full of that. There is a guilt trip, there is a hurt trip, there is this, there is that, there is all kinds of, what is that called, emotional strings pulling. This is how you keep in samsara. This is how the relationships are kept on going, through obligation, through kind of heaping up some guilt, heaping up some, whatever it is, dependencies. Codependence, it is called in the parlance, psychological parlance, it is called codependency. Veda doesn't make you codependent. Veda is beautiful because Veda makes you outgrow the need for it. Through the space, through giving you space to have your emotional growth as a dharmic person, as a devotee, it makes you outgrow it. That is why she is like a mother. So the mother, a functional loving mother, doesn't cling on to the child. Lets the child cling. As long as the child needs to hold on to her sari, she will say okay, the child needs it. But then the child grows up, say, separation anxiety is relatively gone, and then the child starts to walk around, sees the butterfly, sees the bird, sees the animals, dog, cat, everything. See, its world expands to include more things than the mother. The mother smiles, the mother is joyous, the mother doesn't want it to keep on clinging and, feeding bottle and all these things. She doesn't want that. Then the child grows up and the mother tries to tie the shoes. The child says, no, go away, I'm doing it myself. The mother is overjoyed, a functional mother is overjoyed. Array, look at my child, how independent she has become, how independent he has become. This is how the Veda is. The Veda grows you up and then lets you go. Sometimes you become even slightly sick of it. Why? Because you ask the question, is this what this life is all about? Is this life only fulfilling my wants? And then just in a devotional way I understand, but is this what the life is all about? Karta bhokta, karta bhokta, karta bhokta. Then if that is what life is all about, then how come I'm still dissatisfied? How come I still have issues? How come I still have discontent centered on the self? How come I'm not, finally we are using the word happy? No matter what I get, no matter what I want, no matter what I have, I'm still seething, boiling. I'm still running around like a restless person. I'm still discontented. I'm still unhappy. Then you ask the question, why? This is the best gift of the Veda. The mother hugs you. The mother is truly a mother. She embraces you. She wipes away your tears of all the things you could not have and whatever you wanted, whatever you couldn't get. She consoles you through prayer, through making you a dharmic person, through devotion. And then what? And then she lets you go. She lets you grow. That is the mother. That is why it is hitam. She lets you grow. And then what? She lets you grow into. Now, you are already a devotee. Now the devotee grows into a mumukshu, a seeker of this happiness, freedom, into a jignasu, finally a seeker of knowledge. This is very, 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 very important. These two things are very important. So this is a quantum leap from being a seeker of all the things in the world, all sources of what I thought were happiness in the world, and then realizing, understanding that these are not lasting. That whatever is hitam, whatever is sukham is gone away, Nashvara. It is subject to destruction. This is what the Veda gives the understanding, because I keep seeking. After I seek this, I need something else. Then I need something. Where is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? So the Veda is, very, very clear that, okay, there must be a full stop. And that full stop is what? Kevala, you. You alone are the stop. You alone are the starting point. You alone are the stopping point. This is the best gift of the Veda. And that, that jigyasa, that desire to know this is a wonderful gift of emotional growth. Without undergoing the first portion of the Veda, no one can desire for something other than the finite, the infinite, which is you know. And then that is why we have what is called Vedanta. Vedanta means Veda, which is a body of knowledge, generally includes Vedanta, but Vedanta requires a special mention. Vedanta means Vedanam Antaha, the last portion of the Vedas. But nobody says, I am reading the book now, and then tomorrow I will read the last chapter of the book. I have bought the book, but the last chapter I didn't have enough money for. I will buy it tomorrow. Or sometimes more often people say, I will not read the last chapter of the book. I will only read the book. Nobody talks like that. It is a very, very silly idea to say, I'll read the last chapter of the book in the next life. But here it is, it is justified. It is yogya, it is appropriate to separate Veda from Vedanta, the book from the last chapter. Because the first portion of the Veda, which we have been talking about this whole time, the first portion of the Veda, what does it do? It is talking only about relative hitam. Hitam, that is small, that is finite, that I need to get along in my daily life. Oh Lord, let there not be mosquitoes. Forget mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are very welcome right now in the age of coronavirus, because we have a huge pandemic. People used to be so worried about mosquitoes. Now it's a small bite, it's a small inconvenience. Plus, as Pujya Swamiji used to say, mosquito gets rid of Papa, but you're also giving punya because you're making a blood donation. Because the mosquito only needs a blood meal when she is pregnant. Otherwise, it's vegetarian. So you're giving, what is that? You're donating blood to a pregnant female. So you'll be, having some punya. Unless, of course, you make the mosquito into chutney by going like that. That is Papa. Okay. So now, this, coming back to this discussion between Veda and Vedanta, there are many differences. That's why it is reckoned separately. Many differences. So the Veda deals with Hitam and Sukham. Hitam and Sukham where? In the everyday. And that Hitam and Sukham keeps changing all the time. Why does it keep changing all the time? It keeps changing all the time because, what you liked when you were 2 years old, you wanted a balloon. And will you be happy if you get balloon now? You don't care for balloon now. Your Hitam has changed, Same person in a different place, in a different time has different desires. And the same person wants something right now and then later on wants to get rid of it. Like how Putra Kameshti, the person did and had children, and then that was a few years back. Now they are teenagers. Now he's thinking of how to outsource them because they are creating problems. Teenage means a lot of, rebellion will be there, all that will be there. So now, having time, quality time without the child is Hitam. Before, what will I do without the child was Hitam. So like this, it is all, very, very, what is that? Very, very finite. Everything is finite. But then the desire for the infinite, the desire for something everlasting is already planted in the heart. It is not a cultivated desire. And that what is everlasting is the final Purushartha called moksha. Mumuksha. Mumuksha here is moktum ichha. Desire to be free. Now we only want to be free of coronavirus. We only want to be free of sadness. We only want to be free of small things. But really speaking, all the desire to be free of anything is actually the desire to be free, period. No conditions. I want to be free regardless of being in a finite body. I want to be free despite of having a finite mind. I want to be free despite the fact that I can't see very well, I can't move very well, I can't hear very well. Finite senses. That is the freedom. That is the desire that is already planted in me. Sarvesham buddhau raga dveshau sthitau, including the raga, to be forever. This is universal. Even the mosquito that bit you wants to be forever. Yeah. That's why it doesn't bite you on a lit surface. It bites somewhere on the legs underneath where you cannot see. Why? Because it doesn't want to get moksha from with your hand. Yeah. It doesn't want to become chutney. It wants to live. And it knows that this cruel hand will come. It knows, instinctively it knows. That's why the small size is compensated by 360-degree vision. It can see in the back, front, everything, all kinds of complex eyes it has. We all have a pair of simple eyes, and that too we need glasses, but it has complex eyes, it doesn't need glasses. And you slowly bring the hand, it already has seen it, and by the time you bring the hand, it has flown off and it has bitten you in another place, or it has bitten your neighbor. It is that subtle. This is the moksha is applicable to the mosquito also. The desire to be is universal. The desire to be forever. This is the desire for moksha. Only in the human being do we find this moksha fully developed. In other beings it is not so much there. This desire, for moksha is just there. I want to just be free. So as long as the cow is allowed to graze in the pasture, have its babies, and then die a natural death, it is happy. It is happy if it doesn't end up between two pieces of bread. It is very happy. This is all it wants. But the human being, this desire is not so covered. It is uncovered, so to speak, because there is complete self-awareness. The dog is also self-aware. When what is that dog which has a little bit of brandy it carries around the neck? Bernard, Saint Bernard, Saint Bernard. It's supposed to rescue people trapped in snow and all. And so when it rescues, they are all frozen, frostbitten, and they will break this little keg of brandy and drink to warm up. That's the idea. Rescue dog. It is huge. And when the Saint Bernard meets this pocket dog, what is this pocket dog? Chihuahua. It is not confused. It does not mistake this pocket dog to be a cat. Saint Bernard will, woof, it will bark. Pocket dog will go inside the lady's handbag, and from the lady's handbag it will also bark. You know, species recognition is there. Predator recognition is there. Why? For the propagation of the species. So species recognition is there, other species predators recognition is there, and I want this grass, I don't like this, small ragadveshas will be there, the small personality will be there, that's all. But for the human being, the awareness is total awareness, which is both a blessing, because one can pursue this knowledge, which is also not such a great blessing because one is pained by ignorance. What does it mean? The dog doesn't know it is not God, but it doesn't bother. It doesn't say, when will I know this? When will I have this? When will I have the infinite? But the human being, is bothered by self-ignorance. In other words, for ignorance is bliss. When you don't know you are ignorant, then only it is bliss. The dog doesn't know it is self-ignorant. But you are dogged by self-ignorance and you know it. This is what makes it very painful. Why self-ignorance? Ignorance of, you're discussing some movies and you have the movie that got the Oscar last time. You know it very well. You have that movie on the tip of the mind, but it is not coming to the vak, it is not coming to the tongue. It's not sitting on the jihva. So you get very upset because you're so, and then you Google it. You have to find out immediately what that movie name was. Same thing with the infinite, you, Brahman, Bhagavan, whatever it is. You have to, the desire for that is planted, and when you don't have it, it is that's why the first part of the Veda does not fulfill. It has to kiss you, grow you up, and let you go into the arms of Vedanta. That is what is the leap called mumukshutvam. And this leap is not an ordinary leap, because you have to make yet one more leap, bigger than Hanumanji crossing the ocean. A bigger leap. Why? Because it's a quantum leap, it's a cognitive leap from being a person who produces endlessly the finite to becoming the seeker of the infinite. Listen carefully. Yeah. From being the infinite producer of the finite, I mold myself into being the seeker of the infinite. If you are an infinite producer of the finite, there is no joy. There is only sorrow, there is only samsara, there is only a cycle. An endless cycle, a vicious, pernicious cycle of means and ends, means and ends, and means and ends, and producer, consumer, producer, consumer, producer, consumer, karta, bhokta, karta, bhokta, karta, bhokta, karta, bhokta. You get tired. And you still cannot produce the infinite, because the infinite is you. It's not a product. It's not something you can objectify. And besides, the infinite is already gained, like the Meenakshi goddess sitting in the temple. She did not run and come just before the arati. She was already there in that dark sanctum sanctorum, which is the guha, which is called guha in Sanskrit. Guha nihitam brahma. So this Brahman, this Ishvara is sitting where? In the guha, which is the buddhi, which is not lighted up by this knowledge. Because this is not something to do. Moksha is not an action. It is a parama purushartha. It is a separate purushartha, because gaining which arthakama, everything is gained. If you pursue artha kama separately, you don't get moksha. If you pursue moksha, artha kama comes along. This we have to understand. This is very difficult to understand, because people are oriented towards only getting what they pursue. They don't have the understanding, if you pursue the one thing which is everything, everything comes along. Everything comes for free. Here it is buy one, get three free. Usually it is buy one, get one free. And here you buy into moksha. You buy into the pursuit called moksha, and all the other three come along for free. Everything comes along for free. This we have to gain. This we have to totally see. And when you see this, there is great, what is that? There is great happiness. There is great satisfaction. So therefore what? Vedanta is its own separate thing. Because the first portion of the Veda was keeping you busy, karta bhokta, and then what? Finally now you know this karta bhokta is a cycle. I have to jump out of this cycle. I have to jump this sinking ship, constantly sinking raft made of good karma. How much good karma can you do? You can do a little bit, you can do a little bit, little more. Even if you give away, even if Bill Gates, or now it is not Bill Gates, it is Amazon. Thanks to lockdowns and Corona, Amazon Bezos has become what? The richest person in the world. Let us say, even if he were to give away all his wealth, it would still be finite, because there is a number on it. And the punya that is earned is again finite. And so therefore the infinite being you is not a product. You have to recognize this, because you cannot produce the infinite. Infinite and karma have nothing to do with one another. The pursuit of moksha is not like the pursuit of chocolate cake, therefore. And so therefore what? Therefore I have to see that I have to have a certain amount of self-growth. First of all, without this self-growth, this understanding doesn't come. Then I have to see that there is a different kind of a pursuit. This is not the same as going after chocolate cake. This is not the same as, going after some finite thing in the universe. This is a U-turn, going after myself alone, understanding the truth of the self, for which I need help, because this I cannot do on my own. And therefore walks in the understanding, the understanding, the preparation. And then second, what walks in the guru, because I need help for from somebody who has gone through this same questioning, this same enquiry, and has crossed over to the other side of this enquiry. I need help. And therefore what? Therefore the Kaivalya Upanishad, to help us with this understanding, begins with a very beautiful story of a sage. Already he was kind of a sage alone. Ashvalayana. Ashvalayana is what? Ashvala Gotrodbhava. Ashvalayana. Ashvala Gotrodbhava. This, what does he do? He goes to Brahmaji. He goes to the source. Brahmaji is the creator of the universe. So definitely he is the creator of the Veda, and he will know what to do. He is creator of Vedanta also. So he goes to the source. And then what does he do? He, says respectfully, please teach me this knowledge. Teach me this knowledge, knowing which everything is known. And we'll see that in detail. Just, I'm just telling you the opening premise of this. The story is this, that a great person, a Rigvedi, he was the follower of the Rig Veda. And then what does he do? He goes to a guru. And who is the guru? So that there is not some, the Kaivalya Upanishad does not choose some local guru. If there is some local guru, you will say, what is the use of this person? I don't even know this person. And what will he have to teach, or what will she have to teach? Nothing. Forget it. So the guru here is an exalted guru. Brahmaji is Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is the guru here, so that there is no doubt that you are not getting the real thing. You're getting the real thing, you're getting the real knowledge, and you can say, okay, whatever Ashvalayana got is valid. I can put a check mark on it. If it is good enough for sage Ashvalayana, it must be good enough for me. So Ashvalayana approaches the teacher This is a typical Upanishad beginning, And what is this Upanishad? Upanishad is another name for Vedanta. That is all it is. It is another name for Vedanta. Vedanam antaha Upanishad nama. So it's also called Upanishad. Very beautiful. It destroys Visharati, and then what? If it destroys self-ignorance, but then it may come back. No. Avasadayati unmulayati. It uproots it. The root of it is gone, so it will not come back like a weed. When you cut the weed, you only cut on the surface. But here it uproots along with the mula and the jada, the cause of sorrow. It removes. What is the cause of sorrow? Self-ignorance is removed in the wake of which knowledge, and that is what is it removes. And by doing what? Brahma gamayati, by making you hold hands with Brahman. It leads you to Brahman and says, okay, meet the truth of yourself. This is this Bhagavan, this is the infinite that you are, you are wanting to greet. It does the impossible, because you cannot really greet yourself. You cannot objectify yourself. But it does it through a wonderful way, through the ear of through the mouth of the teacher, which activates this Veda, which is a means of knowing. This Veda is a means of knowledge. Vedanta is also a means of knowledge. And means of knowing what? Knowing something you cannot get any other way. This has to be understood. Both Veda and Vedanta, whatever is there in the Veda, how to go to heaven, how else will you get? How to have children, how else will you get? Through this ritual, through this knowledge. And same thing with Vedanta. I am whole and free of all pain and sorrow. How else will you get this knowledge? Through the study of Vedanta. And so therefore what? Here there is nothing to do except to sit back, relax, and listen. And that listening alone from the mouth of the teacher activates this knowledge and removes the fog and the clouds of what is that self ignorance, allowing you to see Meenakshi, goddess Ambal, within. This is what the whole thing is. Very, very beautiful. And so sage Ashvalayana goes to Brahmaji and addresses him in a special way and asks for this knowledge. How he addresses him and what kind of knowledge he asks for is all going to be seen in the next lecture. Okay, so I'll stop here so that we have some time to interact and we have some questions. You can type it in the chat, and then I will I will look at it, or Nitin will look at it and tell me, and then we can do that. Okay, so we'll say the closing prayer. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadagya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you, Swamini ji. It was a wonderful introduction to an important text. I will see if there are any questions. I do not see any questions.
Now they may type. We'll wait for
Yeah.
1 or 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
If anybody has questions, please
generally,
type.
if you have any questions, you can type. Generally, in the middle, it is difficult to ask because you're listening. So if there are any questions, you type, and
Yes,
I will answer.
Yes, yeah. We will wait for 5 minutes and see if.
We can see if there are anything. We'll wait for 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever you want, and we will see. Otherwise,
To
next
which branch of Veda is this Upanishad connected?
Atharva Veda. That is why I had chanted the Atharva Veda Shanti
Okay.
mantra. So while we are waiting, if there are any questions, I will speak a little bit about this. So in the beginning, the Veda was one, but one of the sages in the tradition, Lord Vyasa, Bhagavan Vyasa, he is called, an earliest link, our earliest link to the parampara, Guru parampara, he divided them into 4 and gave them to families to keep. Each one will have certain portions, Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad, all 4 things will be there, and these are all different teachings for different stations in life, and so then he gave them to families to keep. Even now the Veda is held in the head. Even now, if you go, books are not allowed. This book knowledge is all recent, it was not from before, and so therefore this is what was there, and so that's why we have Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, Rig Veda. And of course, if somebody is a researcher, then they will keep on researching the Veda, which is the oldest, which is the newest. We are not interested in all that. We are looking into that which is timeless. Who cares about how old something is? We are not interested in carbon dating, all these things. We are not interested. So therefore, for us, what matters is the message therein. And so each Upanishad belongs to a certain Veda, and then this is belonging to the Atharva Veda. And so the Atharva Veda has a Shanti mantra to ward off all obstacles while we are studying. Okay, yeah.
I think we have few questions.
Okay, let us see.
One is, how does one apply Vedanta to everyday life?
That was the topic in the last talk. I gave a talk in the Shivananda ashram, and how do you apply it in the everyday life? Very briefly, what we have to do is get to the place of activating within ourselves that relaxed person, because that is your nature. You already know it. The compassionate person, because when you are in a place of when you are happy, you can be very generous and compassionate towards everybody. But when you are cranky, then that same compassion is not there. You are irritable, you are edgy. So this is where the gift of Vedanta is, that regardless of the outside situation, it gives you so much inner strength. Dukkhena guruna api na vichalayeta. Bhagavan Krishna puts it beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita, that because of this, what is that, guruna dukkhena, even the greatest of sorrow, confronted outside, greatest of challenges, one is not shaken inwardly. We don't have any power over outward things. You cannot call the weather. You don't, the coronavirus, forget it. You cannot even tell it not to rain. It will rain if it feels like raining. It's all part of laws. You cannot change the laws, you know but you can change yourself. That's all that you can do. You can be a person that is so strong in the face of this rain, etc., or this whatever rains on you. You have swarajya. You reign yourself. You have reigned in the ragadveshas. You have reigned in everything. So you are not reigned upon when you are reigned in. This is swarajya. You are the Raja of yourself. You are the master of your emotions. You are the master of your desires and wants. You are the master of, everything. That's why, and that can only come through the understanding and through the satisfaction of knowing that you are Kevala, you are the whole. Yeah.
Uh, Another question we have is, I will club two questions. They are related to today's your lecture. One is, you have said before that karma is a model to work on the road of dharma leading to Bhagwan.
Yeah.
Could you explain that a little more?
Yeah.
And another question is, can you briefly summarize the three gifts of Veda? Only a
Okay.
gist. Yeah.
Yeah, just not even a gist, a list. Okay, yeah, just a small list. We'll start with that one first. So three gifts. First is, it gives you, it acknowledges that you have desires, and it mints you into a conscious agent working for the fulfillment of the desires. It makes you a conscious attendee, an agent, a responsible for your own life. It makes you mindful. First gift. Second gift, it makes you into a devotee, you know and it makes you into a devotee because you take recourse to Bhagavan. Then karma yoga comes in, all these things come in, and then what does it do? It also makes you into a devotee. And then finally, part two of the second gift is that it makes you into a dharmic person. And then what? So as a result, it emotionally, number three, it emotionally grows you up, and then spits you out to seek this knowledge. That is what it lets you go, to seek this knowledge of Vedanta. These are the three gifts of the first portion of the Veda. Okay. Yeah. And then the karma is a model, which is to make you walk on the road to dharma, that is road of dharma, I have said. Because see, when you become a responsible agent, then you become a dharmic agent, because you cannot drop the agency. In fact, there is no dropping. You are essentially speaking, you are not the agent. You have to understand that I'm not a karta. It's a cognitive dropping. There is no dropping, really speaking. And so what do? You become, a conscious agent, and you become an ethical agent first. And then what happens? Then you are able to traverse the road of life without any conflict. And that is what we want. Once you learn to traverse the road of life without any conflict, karma has no meaning. Do this, do that, no meaning. That's why we have this wonderful treatise called Shukashtakam is a very, very nice, what is that called, um, what is that called? Octet. Yeah, Ashtakam, octet. 8 verses composed by this Bhagavan Vyasa alone. And then Shukashtakam, and then Bhagavan Vyasa's son, Shuka. And then Shukashtakam, the refrain is Ko vidhihi, ko nishedhaha. What kind of do's are there for the person who is a person of self knowledge? What kind of don'ts are there? No do's, no don'ts, no rules. So the rules are in order to master dharma, to master the self. Once you do that, you will naturally be dharmic. It is not a deliberate thing. Okay? Yeah.
We have just 5 more minutes. Just a few couple of related questions are there.
Yeah.
I'll just combine them. One is what is the basis of attaching Upanishads to different Vedas? And another is how to make a beginning to get the knowledge of Vedas. And are there any relevance for chanting any mantras? Is it enough just understanding the text, or is it needed to chant the mantras? And what about the yajnas? The fruits are not visible. Is it only about shraddhas, or how it is?
Okay, can you, just give me one question at a time. I'll just give short answers. That
Okay.
might be better. Yeah.
Okay.
What was the
So the
first one?
first is, what is the basis of attaching Upanishads to different Vedas?
Because no matter which Veda you follow, you will still have the benefit of the Upanishad. So it's a whole little subset, not even a subset, it's a whole set. That's what it is. So it is the Upanishad is there, the rituals are there, and certain purifying mantras are there, meditations are there, everything. It's a whole thing. That's why. So if you have North Indian food, it comes with appetizer, it is attached to certain appetizer, samosas, and then it is attached to gulab jamun at the end. That is how it is, the whole thing. It's a package. That's all. Second one?
How to make a beginning to get the knowledge of Veda?
Yeah, you have already made a beginning. Congratulations. You attended this. Fantastic. Keep listening. This is all you have to do. Catch and listen. Keep listening. Yes.
And is there any relevance for chanting any mantras? Is it enough to understand the meaning?
You can start with understanding the meaning, and then if you want to go deeper, you can learn to chant the mantras. Those are all nice, and traditionally we chant and then the person repeats. Now in webinar and all, it is difficult to do, so I don't follow that. But generally we can you can do that. You can learn to chant. You can if you like to do that, no problem. But the point to learn to chant and all is for is for your understanding. That's all it is.
Uh,
Next.
and next is about the fruits of yajna.
Ah.
Is it fruits are not visible? So is it about
No,
merely
it is
shraddha?
visible. It is visible. You do, some fruits are not visible. It will be visible later. Yeah, it will be activated later. Like Swarga, you don't know whether you went or not. We don't know whether you will go or not. But and even if you go, you cannot tell us, unfortunately, because it is a different realm. So, it is not visible immediately, but it is experienced later. So asmin janmani janmantare va, either in this birth or another birth, it is definitely experienced. So it's not that the fruits are not there. Fruits are there, and then they are visible later. Some are visible immediately, because you whenever you enjoy something in life, like if you enjoyed this lecture, it is your good karma. Yeah, wonderful. Because of purva punya, you are here. So like that we can take. If you enjoy good food, purva punya. This is so punya is very visible. Papa is even more visible. We have collective papa now of this corona, which is extremely visible. All you have to do is look out. Everybody is in a mask, or should be, and then that itself is enough.
And what does the Aranyaka portion of Veda has?
Yeah, Aranyakas are meditative practices to do what is called antakarana shuddhi, to have self mastery over the emotions, recalcitrant, very stubborn emotions. You sit in meditation for hours at a day. You do certain subtle rituals, mental rituals. You do certain meditation. That is for the vanaprasthis. Aranyaka is there.
So final question. Sometimes I am not totally motivated to practice the upasana. Should I just understand this as a state of play of karma, or is there a way to overcome?
Very lovely question. Very clever also. Because this is usually people say, I'm not motivated to study Vedanta. Is it my karma? No, it is not your karma, because even if it is there, some karmic residue might be there in the form of tamas. You are given the efforts, you're given the free will to be able to go against that. You're given the free will to counter that. You're definitely given the free will. So here also, if the upasana is not more motivated, just do 1 minute meditation, which is the acronym for which is OMM. So start with 1 minute meditation. Put on a timer and just for 1 minute you just chant the mantra Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And you know it's going to be only 1 minute, distractions will be fewer, and then you will actually enjoy it. Then people make the mistake of from going from 1 minute to 45 minutes. It will not work. From 1 minute, you have to go to 1 minute twice a day, morning and night. Then from 1 minute twice a day, you go to 1.5 minute twice a day, like that, slow increments. Then the Ahankara will not play a trick on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Swaminiji.
Thank
That
you.
was a wonderful interaction, wonderful session. Viewers, we come to the conclusion of this first session of this weekend's Wisdom with Swaminiji. Do not forget to join in to the evening session same time at 6:30 p.m. Uh, but if you have not registered for evening session, please do. The registration links are different for morning sessions and evening sessions. So if you have not registered, please do register for the evening session as well. The links are available in our website. Thank you again. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha.
Om. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you. Om.